And today, I am actually reaching out from Germany to Arizona, as I am creating community of similar-minded people, and similar-minded in a sense of creative souls, artists, people who feel, perceive more than others and would like to share with their knowledge. I'm an artist myself. I'm a dancer, dance teacher, choreographer, author of books about fantasy / paranormal, abstract art painter, which is behind me. And of course, I have some other things that I keep for now in a secret. Therefore, I watch a lot of videos while my edition of my books, and someone really grabbed my attention, and she's today with us. She's a professor, Margaret Rogers Van Coops, with 2 PhDs. Hello.
Hello. It's nice to be with you.
Thank you very much to agreeing to doing that with me. All the way from Arizona, from Germany and Arizona, with the time difference. We have a 9-hour time difference. It's morning for you, evening for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to introduce you shortly, because actually I could read like 14 pages by now about you, which is fantastic, but I'd rather let you talk.
Well, what would you like to talk about?
Oh, everything what I heard about you with, from other interviews. I find it interesting. Just to mention, you are part of many, like Great Britain Association, Spiritual Association. You are also teacher, healer, crystal therapist. You know also about hypnotherapy. You did that. You wrote also numbers of books about spirituality, about your personal journey. I have just a few books: Discover Your Baby Spirit, Pro-Life, Pro-Choice, Pro-Spirit. So I probably would like to find out a little bit about every of these books. So maybe we will have a time in another videos to do that, or maybe even along. You also talk in numbers of TV, BBC, and other independent networks.
Mm-hmm.
I also heard you were, or you are, an actress, and you were teaching in the drama department in Los Angeles. Is that right?
Yes, you name it, I've had a go.
Yeah. So you are an artist, you are an author, you are a spiritual worker. So can you say how that all started? Like, what were your profound moments that you discovered, that you perceive more than other people maybe around you? Well, maybe not, maybe all around you all the same. But usually when I hear stories of people, it's not the case. It's like those people who perceive more, they are usually the only ones in current environment. And very often they have doubts. Are they crazy, or is that true what they're saying? So how it was with you?
Well, for me, being a child and being born in 1942, yes, I'm 77 in June, and that is a very important number, 7 and 7, 7 lifestyle, and 7 cycle years of things that we have go through. So I see my 11th cycle of 7 years. Very karmic. We'll talk about that later. But anyway, the bottom line is, answering your question, is that for me it was instinctive. There was never a doubting Thomas, because when you're a young baby, you don't know, shall I confirm that with this and that? You're more like in the moment. And so, as I wrote in my book, My Journey into the Oneness, I basically heard the voice of God when my sister had been born, and there's 4.5 years between us. So I have an absolute, time zone for that, of the week after Mum came home with her. And she'd asked me to go out to the kitchen and fetch something back, and all lights were off because we're still after the war, and everything's poor and stuff. And so doors are shut, and coal fires that used to be drafty and smoky, and so forth, with a new baby. So there was a big to-do about making sure I shut all the doors and on my way there and back, which was not very far at all, across a room kind of. And as I got out there to put on the hall light, which was high up on the wall, because I'm, 4.5 and probably about 3 foot, and I have to jump up to catch the light. And as I go to, the light comes on its own. And then I hear all around me sound around, which hadn't even been invented yet. The voice of God, which was the most loving male voice I'd ever heard in my life. And he said, "My child, you're a child of God. You will know great suffering, and you will help those who are suffering."
Ouch.
And I said, "Who are you?" And he said, "I am the one." And I said, and I'm looking around, I can't see anything, where's his voice coming from, And then he said, I said, "What's, the one?" And he said, "All that is." And I said, "What is all that is?" And he said, "Oneness." And that's how young I was when I got that word. And I found out recently that nobody knew it wherever I went, for years. Actually, I'd go to different countries and talk and mention the word oneness, and they'd look at me like, "What?" And now today it's a household word. But I realized that I started it, and it was interesting. My husband's just decided to start reading the Urantia book. And if you've heard about that, it's a complex of many people put their channeled works together. It's quite a good book. But I've never.
Can you say that again, the title?
Urantia. Well, he started reading it just yesterday, and he says, "Margaret, when did you start with the word oneness?" So I told the story I told you, and he said, "Oh, well, according to this book, in the 50s, they first introduced the word oneness in that."
Much later.
Yes, but it's interesting that it did come out in that book. And when I went to become a medium, by the time I was 20, I could do anything with spirit in my head. If I wanted to paint, I'd sit down and draw something, and it wasn't that they were in my hand, it's going around like this or anything.
So you never questioned them? You never questioned the voice?
I just sat down and we drew together, and it came out perfectly. And when I was even older, I was about 10 years older than that, I was doing a lot of drawing at night, kids are in bed and so on. And it was my way of being peaceful and calm in those days. And I was trying to draw, I had a picture of one of the, I can't think of its name right now, it'll come to me when I'm not trying to think about it. But anyway, this person in the 1700 with the pot belly, and he was holding out something to a dog, which was a dog that I'd once had who'd passed over, a poodle. And I said, "Let me draw the poodle." I'm telling you, I tried and tried to draw that poodle, and I had to keep erasing my pencil work because it just was not coming in proportion or anything. And then I said, "Okay, draw it with me." Perfect. And I really understood then that we do things together. That was a point in my life where I came to realize that there wasn't anything I couldn't do if I allow myself to be one with the oneness. Even down to if my car breaks down, I just have to open the hood and go, "Okay, what do I fiddle with?" And
that's a fantastic feeling. It's like a perfect security about the world. Okay, what now?
Well, it was very, very secure in many ways for me in that way. But in terms of the external parts that are going on around me, it was quite honestly a hellhole. My mother and father were not, they're war-torn, how people were, and frustrated. And Mum's a cripple, so she's thinking Prince Charming's coming home from the war and he's going to make everything wonderful. And he, on the other side, has been out there in the front line with tanks and having to do terrible things, you know, under the law, which he didn't want to do from his soul, but had to do under the rules of war. And so he came back with post-traumatic stress disorder, which they didn't call that in those days. So he was supposed to stiff upper lip and upper class and all that stuff, you know, I grew up with. And so, you know, we had this facade of, you know, my maiden name was Pogson, Pogson, which derived from depose, the French, when we were invaded in Hastings in 1066. So that's how my ancestry goes way back. And so I had all this snobbery and all of that going on as well. And my father would say, you know, the least little thing, blow up and yell at me and blame me for something my younger sister had left out and mother might trip over, and, you know, all these kinds of
things. Sounds like a pressure, a lot of pressure.
It was, and I would often run away and cry. And then there's my mother yelling at me because she's dealing with my sister who was willful in her own way. What child isn't at 12, you know, 4 years old or whatever as I got older. But by the time I was 7, I wasn't a child anymore. I had to grow up because my mother went into hospital for surgery on these that were so bad. And that's another long story. One day I'll tell you it. But basically they took her toes off, took out the middle bones and put the toes back on her feet, which enabled her to walk. And the reason was arthritic, rheumatoid arthritic, mononeumo, something I long. I never really knew it all. And so my father stood me in front of him. I was yay high, you know, and said, okay, you're going to be a very big girl. You're going to have to cross the main roads. You're going to have to get yourself on a bus. You're going to a new school. You've got to come home for lunch. You've got to go here for there for lunch and get back on the bus and go, you know, and so on. So by the time my mother was in hospital a long while, and by the time she came out, you know, I'd learned. I was a latchkey kid. I'd learned how to let myself in, sit down, do my homework, make a cup of tea, even handle hot water at that age, you know.
That sounds like two different worlds you were living in. One was this with your, we can call it spirit guides, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they were coming anytime you were calling them. Yeah. Were they helping you? Were you asking them, calling them that time, like, hey, it's so good here, and what is that? Where am I living?
All the time. They would come, and at night I would cry in my pillow, and they would come and calm me down and tell me it's okay, don't be so sad, and, you know, things will be better. But there was another side too, because I was also rescuing, healing and rescuing people from as soon as I was aware. So after the war ended, I would sit on my father's whole brigade would come and reunion, you know, and chat about the old days and stuff. And I would sit on their laps and I'd see their auras being dark blues and greens and reds and so on. And then as I sit there, I'd get really, really hot. And then I would vibrate. And I could feel, I couldn't see it, but I could feel myself like as if I was shaking. And then I'd look at them and I'd see their aura was pearlesque, like abalone. And then I knew I could jump down and run and play. And I got lots of pennies to work the penny slot machine, you know, in those days. And then sure enough, as I'd done that, someone else would pick me up and I'd do the same thing. And so when I was about 9, I don't know exactly 8 or 9, I was honored by the regiment and made the only female member of the regiment. It's in my book, so I won't say too much about that. I hope people will buy my books and read them.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm not very good at promoting.
It's an inspiring story, really, because, you know, the interesting thing is the people who are really seeing more and understand other people so well can tap into empaths, you know, the experience of other people. They usually go through great suffering themselves.
Exactly.
Their lives are really not that, you know, at the beginning, or actually even a longer time, not that fancy. They went through a lot of suffering themselves, and it's fascinating, but it's sometimes it's sad, you know, why it should be like that. Is it only the answer why because we we tend to understand only through our own suffering. We have to have this experience. If not, we will never be able to walk in other people's shoes. Mm-hmm. Is that the only way? Because maybe your spirit guides told you something else.
Well, yes and no to that. Absolutely, psychologically, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, practically, in our RNA, we have learned it from people around us. And we've had no reason as young infants and young children to doubt what we take in. And when we get to be about 7, the age I said where I had to grow up, you start to question why. You know, before that, we just basically accept. And in accepting so many different aspects of the world, we're confused. And so confusion births question mark. Right? And so when that happens, then we start asking why. Well, in my generation, it was children are supposed to be seen and not heard. In other words, don't talk, behave yourself. Don't ask why. The answer is because I said so. Well, that didn't help.
Right.
So that's when I would turn to my spirit guides in my head and hear the voices, you know, in my head in those days. I wasn't telepathic in the sense of their thought was my thought as I am today. In those days, I had to listen. So my clairaudience was developing, which is the psychic sense of hearing. And the psychic sense of hearing can come in 3 ways. Externally, like I said, the voice of God, which is all around me and definitely not in my brain box. And then the second way is when we hear our own voice talking to ourselves, because spirit guides don't want to frighten us with a sudden strange noise. So we'll either hear our own voice talking at us, or we'll hear mom's or dad's, you know, someone that we trust voice. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you oftentimes when I used to come running in, you know, to mom or dad, because I thought they called me, to find them completely engrossed in whatever they were doing. And I'd say, did you call me? And they go, no. Okay. It was someone else, you know. So it started off small ways like that until I learned to listen to the voices. And then as I got older, I was just growing so much in my teenage years. I was always doodling, drawing, and then I still do it today. I'm on the phone, I'll make boxes and triangles and squares and so forth. And I have to stop and look at what I've just doodled because I know that's a message relative to the person I'm talking to.
That's great.
And so, you know, there's different things I used to draw in those days, and I'd start to understand the symbology of what I was drawing. And in the same with your dreams, you like to do dreams, right?
Yes, I am big on dreams. I dream excessively, and half of my books are, you know, half reality, half dreams. So
I bet they're interesting. What's your book called? What's your favorite?
The first of the Oracle series, it's published now in America. And it's Here or There, and I put it in a work of fiction because I am, you know, my backgrounds are from Poland, so I put it, I didn't want to come forward because whatever I was seeing, feeling, and dreaming about, I say, okay, people will really think I'm crazy, you know? So I had this piercing image of being a priestess or oracle in ancient Egypt. And I was doing some sort of manipulation on DNA or zombies. I was turning, like really the images were so frightening, hitting me in my forehead, that I was scared of that at the beginning, and I was murdered for that. So that's how the story started, and I put it in my reality of Poland, of course, the young artist that time wanting to immigrate to the Netherlands, which I did. But in this book, I was thinking, like, you know, to show basically how this transition happens to people who perceive, but they don't quite believe. This voice is not so obvious. It's coming really in the puzzles.
Well, while you were talking, I got an awful headache on that line. Yeah, so that confirms that you were definitely, you know, not doing well in that life. But at the
Yes.
but at the same time, I do feel you have some confusion there between symbolically, you know, doing something zombie-like is more about you're trying to tell yourself you were working with the dead. And working with the dead back in Egyptian time was you had to remove all the genitalia and the inner organs and so on. And those to be
These
preserved.
eyes were
And
really white. I remember these eyes of the zombie were really white. And it's sort of, I called her Sarah, the character I called Sarah. She was cursed by someone and she was murdered, you know, in heart. And it was underground. It was somewhere in an underground. That's what I saw in the images. That's how I wrote it.
so, which is wonderful. But what you got to realize is that when a person is dead, the eyes do become opaque and do turn up into the head eventually. And also, you know, so that's another way of confirming what you were doing. Underground, also a lot of places in Egypt was very hot, so a lot of places were built down into the ground. And there are a lot of chemicals that were used in those days to preserve the body, which meant you were inhaling fumes, which would give you the headaches I was feeling. And,
Yes.
and the murdering aspect is more about the situation you were in at that time, which was politically very nerving, or unnerving, I should say, because it was in the time of Agamemnon, if I can even say it, Agamemnon. See, what would I do without spirit guides? And so you can look that up in history and see what was going on, but they're telling me that Egypt was having a lot of battles around and about, so wasn't a happy. So this is a kind of thing that, you know, I learned to do with spirit, was to look at the earthbound spirits, which I'm moving on from your life there, you know, passing out of the body, remembering what you've been doing. You know, we have, where's the light? Where am I going? You know, where's the heavens? Where's, you know, the spaceship that's going to take me to Lala, whatever it is in some way, to whichever life we're living in. Plus, you know, we don't live lives consecutively, if I can get the word out.
Yeah.
You know, we could be incarnated, say, in 10 BC, and then come back in 20,000 AD, and then go back to BC again, and we can flip backwards and forwards. And we can.
That's time travel. This, yeah, like you going.
It's not really time travel in terms of our consciousness. It's in terms of the oneness. Oneness does not have time.
Yeah.
So when the oneness wants a transition change, then the aspects of many come together in unity to agree to bring about that change. Mm-hmm. Some of them will do it negatively and some of them will do it positively. And so the conflict between the negative and positive is, i.e. war, to an argument in a living room, is going to bring about a change in the way a person perceives themselves, and from what their job is and what they're going to do. And hopefully over time, we each incarnate in some way, spiritually learning, evolving into a higher dynamic energy. Now, you asked me earlier, when we were talking before we came together here, to do the show, what about spirit guides?
Yes, please.
I want to go before spirit guides to what about earthbound spirits, as you've just talked about, you know, this dream that you had that you wrote as a story. The bottom line is a lot of people do not go directly to heaven, especially in a wartime. You know, one minute you're sitting in the kitchen, you're having your soup, and the next minute you're dead. What happened? Where am I?
Yeah. Did you just say heaven, that they don't go to heaven?
Yeah. Well, that's what we called it when I was that young. So my mind's going.
Yes,
You know,
because of course there are different concepts where the soul can go.
Yeah, and so you know, I didn't know the word astral or anything like that when I was 7 years old. It was heaven and hell, you know. So what would happen is, with all the negativity, my mother would pray to God to, you know, it sounds terrible, but to take my dad away somehow, you know, from her. And it sounds dreadful, but she used to make me take her to psychics because I had to walk with her because she was a cripple, and get readings to find out where my dad was going to die, so she didn't inherit.
Oh my God.
It was bad. I told you it wasn't good. My mother's I loved her dearly, but you know, she's typical Pisces where they always expect the worst, so they look for answers hoping it would be better. And in those days, a woman could not get national support from a government, especially after a war. You know, the country had no money. So it was always, you know, he's not this loving Prince Charming. He's this neurotic, shouting, yelling, screaming person, you know, who's, you know, come home from the war and brought all his damage with him. And while I could see that, I wasn't old enough to do anything about it except for, you know, sit with him. And one day, I don't know, I was probably about 9. Again, you know, a lot happened between 7 and 10 years old, you know. I was growing and opening up, but he was in a particular down period, and I was sitting on the floor, holding his hands like this, looking up at him like that. And he started telling me everything that he went through during the war. And I'm you know, with the spirit guides. And as he's telling me, I'm seeing it in my head, as though I'm looking through his eyes. And then when it was all done, my mother came in several times and said, stop telling her these things. She shouldn't hear these things. And I remember looking over at her and saying, Mom, I need to know these things. It's okay. Some of 7 and 9, I don't know exactly. So she went out again and left us to it. And that was a doorway of consciousness that opened for me, in that I suddenly realized I could share my mind with my father, heal him at the same time, because I could see his aura changing, and bonding with a man that I'd actually been afraid of. So I became the daughter finally, rather than the little girl whose dad was always stern and yelling and screaming, you see. So over the years, that flipped around to my dad became my student. And
that's
so
fantastic.
when I was in my early 30s, he wanted to find out what his famous daughter was up to. And he would drive across London through rush hour once a week to come and sit in my circle that I had at that time, where I was teaching people to be psychic and to, you know, try and channel and be trance kind of work, you know. And he actually often would go, I'm going off now, I'm going to trance.
That's so funny.
And the older he got, the more he'd do it. Yeah, and we got used to it, you know, and then he'd come back, oh, I just been listening and talking to this and doing that, you know. And so, you know, he went from a real snob and upper class and can't talk to black people to, before he died, he would talk to anybody and be their best friend, you know. And he
That's a great transition, because
great transition.
A lot of people, they don't have this chance in life. They die still unaware of what happened and unhappy and not satisfied. So that's an enormous change for someone like that, because those patterns in the brain, that's pretty strong when you are trained to be certain thing. And then, but yeah, all of a sudden he had a daughter like you, so it's possible.
And, you know, I got the final closure after his death, because he was 16 when he died. So he's been gone, 3 years nearly. And I went to New Mexico to do an expo. And one of the people there I kept wanting to talk to her, but I was so busy, so I let it go. And it was the end of the day, and I finally walked over to her and I said, I don't know why, but I've been wanting to talk to you. And she said, oh, you've finally come over. She said, sit down. I said, what? She said, well, your dad's been bugging me all day. She says, he's standing there behind you going, I'm so proud of her. She's my daughter. I'm so proud of her. I really, really didn't know what I thought she could do. She does so much more than I thought she did. So, and I knew that she was a good medium, and without shadow of doubt, everything she told me about my father was absolute 100% accurate. And I want to encourage anyone out there who is psychic, don't be afraid of it. You know, it is weird, it is strange. You do feel like you're, you know, a fifth wheel, as they say here.
Yeah, yeah.
But ultimately, you find the balance. And when you do, you got more advantages than anyone else, because you can see the situations as you walk into them, and you can
more clearly, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The screaming and yelling and all these things, you know. And at the same time, you can stand up for yourself by quietly saying, you know, one of the things I teach my students is like, if I do this right now, if I come towards you and look into your eyes, if we go into a person's space and we keep eye contact, we immediately stop any roughness, shall we say, of thinking.
It's funny you mentioned that, because, you know, when I was on my after post-diploma studies after my university, and I went for psychology. I think we had a gestalt technique, and it was one of the technique they were teaching already for psychology in a psychology department. And I got that time, I did that exercise for barely 1 minute with a guy. We just stared at each other's eyes. Everything disappeared, and we realized we knew each other from another lifetime. We were warriors in Italy. For some reason, that was amazing.
It can come up like that, you know, because the rational mind is actually looking for, when did we last meet? You know, why do, and I've got to consciously rationalize and justify why I'm trusting this person. But actually, it's deeper than that. When you're looking eye to eye and you're coming into the space, you're actually coming through the aura. Your aura is mixing with their aura, so you're overlapping. And in that moment, everything that you are blends, okay? That's why most people go to the movies, they look for a separate seat, because they don't want to sit with someone who's negative, you know. So in the same way, you know, people who are yelling and screaming, what do? You want to step back and walk away. Of course, as a child, I was always walking away because there was too much of that going on around me. But coming back to me in terms of the earthbound spirits, they would appear in my bedroom at night with blood all down their bodies and bandages, or help me, you know, and I'm like this under the covers, you know, I don't want to see that, you know. And I went out to my mother when I learned about mummies in Egypt, because I've been talking to you know, I've got so many Ramesses and Rama and different spirit guides on the other end of the high advantage level, if you want to say it that way.
Yes.
And they would teach me, just like you were having your dreams, only they're showing me and talking to me while I'm in bed, because I would not fall asleep. My parents would go to sleep around 11. I'd still be wide awake in bed, you know, and I'd hear my mother crying in her pillow. You know, it was just really not a good environment in a very small apartment in London, which I'm still trying to sell.
Okay.
But anyway,
it's an advertisement.
I think it'll be gone by the end of this month. We got something going on there. But anyway, so, you know, imagine being horrified as a young 7-year-old watching all these dead people turning up. And it became that, you know, I would see Jesus, and he like the first time I saw Jesus, he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, and the soldiers had come, and he turned and looked back at me like that over the shoulder, and I'm like, you know, I'm frozen in time. What's this? You know, what do I do? Kind of feeling. and snapped out of that, and Jesus disappeared. Well, the years went by and he would come and go like that, but he would never speak. And when he finally did choose to speak through me, it was on, it was an amazing situation that happened when I was in, I'd like to share this, I've never shared it with anyone. This mutual friend of my husband and I had said that there was someone who wanted to meet us. And so she drove us there. And when we went into this apartment, we walked into the living room. There was a feast laid out. I mean, a feast. There was food for 30 people. There were cakes, there were buns, there were roast joints of various turkey and ham and this and that. And it wasn't Thanksgiving as far as I can recall or anything like that. Yeah. And I walked in there and I said, "Oh, we're having a party." And she said, "No, it's all for you." And I was anorexic in those days, and I didn't eat much. So imagine.
Okay, that's so ironic.
And you know, the stress and everything I've been through with divorces and things as well, you know, before I met my husband now. So so I nibbled at stuff, and there was just the three of us who were visiting this woman, and she said that she would love it that if I would give her trance session. So we all sat in a circle, and that was the day that Jesus decided to speak through me. And he came through on the cross. And I felt all the hardship of the breathing and all these kinds of things. And then that went away, and then he spoke. Whatever he said, I have no memory of it. But I know after I came out of the trance state, the host said, "I can't believe this. I can't handle this. Sorry, I'm going to bed." We were left to leave the house. We didn't know what we'd done to her. I can't even remember her name. I don't know who she was. And I don't know to this day why that she felt to cook a feast for me.
Interesting.
But I've never forgotten that. It was like a symbol of you can have the world at your feet if you believe in us. But I didn't.
I feel that when you say, you know, sometimes you say the words, and I feel that strongly in my spine.
And that's what we need to get everyone to know. I mean, it took me years to understand what the message was.
Because we know that, but in a sense, I think it's more difficult to put that in a practice, in everyday practice, to trust what we hear, trust what we should do. And there is this conflict between our personality within ourselves, like, okay, is this right thing to do? Do I choose to feel good, or do I choose to make someone else feel good? Sometimes those things are in conflict.
Or the other way around. Sometimes we need to make someone feel bad in order for them, tough love, in order for them to find out there's something better, a different way to look at things and do things. And sometimes, you know, mummy is the monster. Whoa, what are you doing? Whoa, face, you know, and you're looking.
That's right.
Well, what happened, you know? But we need the controversy throughout our lives, and it's to find, as a child, to try and find a balance in all the misery and the pain and the suffering of a war-torn world. You know, was every step something was going on somewhere. In some way, someone was suffering, someone was angry, someone was crying, someone was laughing at you because they thought you were an idiot, you know, someone was like astounded by you and I can't handle this, this is too much, goodbye. You know, it's like people coming and going all the time. Whereas children today who are born, who know they're psychic, have got parents who are psychic, who are nurturing them, see? Mm-hmm. And so there's a difference in the generation.
There is. Yeah, that is a problem. I still have that image in my mind of that, I would call it Last Supper almost, about this image. When that lady, she couldn't take your reading, she couldn't take your message probably. And isn't that funny? Because that is this perfect symbol, because she also couldn't take it. You couldn't take that food. It was presented, and she couldn't take that message. And it's the perfect symbol, like we are all the same in a sense. It's just the difference is
we can all have the feast if we know how to receive it. And
yeah, that's the problem. How to receive it?
Well, let me just say, we have to put down the garbage that we've absorbed from all these people in the world who've told us this is what you're supposed to believe. Now you copy us and you'll be fine. You do different from us, you're ostracized, you're outside.
Exactly. You're not accepted, so you kind of have to...
Tribal consciousness, let's put it that way. You know, if you're in the tribe and you do what the tribe's rules are, you're fine. Break the rule, you're in trouble. Take your little arrow, go hunt your own food and go out there in the world and survive. That's scary. I don't want to go out there all alone. I need to get someone who's going to come me. So I'm going to go and taint someone else with my consciousness. You know, I'm going to go and say, we don't have to be here. We could go off and go there. And we find this other person as a support system to break away from the pain and the suffering. But the problem is we don't realize we've got the pain and suffering embedded within us, in the DNA, in the RNA. The DNA is very interesting. I've studied that on and off over the years, how like some people all come out looking like they've all come out of the same pickle jar, you know, so alike, you know, and there's other people, families, you look at them and you go, you can't be the mother of that child, it doesn't look anything like you. Right. And you find out they birthed them, you know, it's like they're looking like great grandpa, you know. My family used to say to me that I look like my father's sister who died when she was 25. And nobody had a photo of her, so I couldn't even make comparisons.
Right.
They see, people who are older see in the younger ones their memories of people they've known, where the children are standing there going, I don't want to be like someone else, I'm me, I want to be accepted as me today. And we still got to teach people that. People don't realize that we don't have to be a bit of everybody unless we can integrate it, harmonize it. And we can't harmonize it if everyone's pulling us apart all the time.
Absolutely, that's another aspect. To see this other part from somebody to ourselves. And accepting it and being able to receive it. You mentioned shortly before we started to record this video, you mentioned me about this beautiful image symbol your guides were telling you, because maybe that's the answer for, maybe you can remind that to all of us. That's how we can learn to receive it. We cannot have all the Last Supper dish, but you do you remember that symbol you told me about?
In the cauliflower.
Yes.
Yes, that it was a long time ago actually when I first saw this simile of the cauliflower looking like a brain. And then the symbol at the time was a watering can, and so, you know, it had the cauliflower, and I was actually cutting one up in the kitchen, actually, if I tell the whole story, and pouring water, you know, on it, washing it. But then I had the symbol of the watering can, and I completely forgot about that until I was talking to you. It just came back, because that's what spirit guides do. And the lesson I got from that is a lot of the water poured off the cauliflower physically when I was doing it. And they were reminding me of that some of the water seeps in through the cracks. And then what happens is the cauliflower will expand, grow bigger. And that I actually saw years later, well, not years later, but a few years later. I was working on a farm and I was actually cutting vegetables, you know, in the fields. With my 2 young children running around, you know, because in those days you didn't have kindergarten or anything like that, you know, that was available. And I actually saw the cauliflowers when the rain came, and they were sudden, actually. We had a storm, and I actually saw them opening up. And so it really brought the point home, and I'd forgotten all about it until we were talking, and then they gave me that. Yeah. So you see, things come out of our reality that they share with us, but not everyone gets it. You know, like you're watching your dreams, which is wonderful, and your symbols, but most people don't. They lose them. You know, it's like, oh. Well,
it was interesting, you know. I don't know what it is, but it's not even they not getting it or they don't want to get it. But the moment you start to talk about it with them, they get sort of aggressive. And they put a lot of energy into trying to prove you are wrong.
That is absolutely right. And you know why? Because if they are not right in their head, then that means they have to change. And if they change, fear comes up. I don't know, I'm going into an unknown world, which is why I wrote my book, My Journey into an Unknown World, which is another book. I'm going to show you that one. I feel this is something that everybody should see. It was originally, I sent you the original in German.
German book, yeah, there was even a German book, yeah.
Yeah, but this is the rewrite of the rewrite. There are 550 pages in this book now.
Wow.
One was 100 something. I padded the original text with my experiences and things I want to teach. And this is a life book. You would need it to refer back to. You know, one read will never teach you everything because you can't retain it all. But my stories help you to remember it. So this book is now called Journey into an Unknown World, The Way to Oneness Revisited. In England and here, I used that title, The Way to Oneness, for the book originally. Okay. So I've combined two titles, German version and my original title. And this is a book that people can buy online, and they can get an ebook or get a softback.
Do you have it on Amazon too?
Yeah, all my books are on
Okay, we're gonna list the links to your Amazon page under the video.
But in here are 19 meditations that one can record and do and learn and listen to your spirit guides. That's why I wanted to mention it.
Fantastic. I'm curious myself. I'm gonna get one too.
You know, if you just want meditations, I've got this one. I
read that in your biography, 50 techniques of meditation. There's so many techniques right now.
Yeah. So there are so many people doing hypnosis. There are so many people doing, what do you call it?
Regression.
No. Audio sound is in the background. You don't know you're hearing it, but you're hearing it. Oh, I can't think.
I don't remember that one. But,
well, it's like you're listening to take a deep breath, relax, and this and that. But what you're hearing in the background is you're safe, or don't worry, or something. You know. No suggestions that are hidden in music or in the vocals behind the actual vocals you'll ever sing to. So it's the alpha state. It can take you to the theta state. So when you go into the alpha and theta state, then you absolutely accept, like when I said coming in with the eyes, a complete sense of I accept it. There's no judgment, there's no rationality about whether it's right or wrong in any sense of the word. It is acceptance of this is coming with me, and therefore I am it, whatever the suggestion is. And that's become very popular over the last 10 years. I've also seen some programs that I've actually tried and they've given me a headache. So I warn anyone that is wanting to do these subliminal hypnosis, hypnoidal suggestions, is if you are worried, stressed, anxious, and anything like that, do get counseling and help from someone first before you go rushing into having, some subliminal suggestion that, hey, I'm happy families and everything. You can't cover. It's like saying, to use an old technology, it's like taking WordPress and trying to use what, they don't mix. So
yes, it's too much gap in one into another. They're not fitting, and it can cause too much conflict in your subconscious mind. I totally agree with that. Yes,
because of that, and so I warn people, just.
But that's interesting, because you mentioned about this hidden messages that are going directly to your subconsciousness. And we know already that the plenty of that, it's every time you go out to the city, you are in the cinema, you're watching TV. There are also those messages running in the background that we don't know about.
Oh, right, yes. and everything, this is your RNA, you see. This is all the programmings that you take in. And the amazing thing is about the human body is that everything you've taken in is stored in your cellular neuromuscular memory. Yeah. In other words, you have an emotional bond with everything that you hear that is current with the position you happen to be holding at the moment of receiving information. So, for example, if I'm in school and I'm 5, please, miss, I want to go potty, and she's ignoring me, the other arm, the other arm. Did you ever have that happen? What is it? What do you want? Please, can I go to the restroom? Now you have to, imagine all that emotion and the look on that teacher because you've upset the class and you disturbed everyone and the other kids are chatting now because you're talking and so on, and you get
It's amazing. These are seemingly little things.
Yeah, and it's all
they can make you sick,
Yeah, and then, but you see, I haven't fast forwarded yet. We fast forward over time. There are many other reasons we put our hand up and we add to that basic one. And we have a mountain of ill feelings, let's put it that way. So here you are, you're your age now, and you're reaching up in the cupboard to get a can out of the cupboard, and all of a sudden, for no reason whatsoever, oh God, I need to go to the bathroom really quick.
Right. Yes. Yeah, we don't know even about those.
Yeah, and patterns. You don't realize you've just dig back into that early childhood time. Yeah. When first made your cellular neuromuscular memory in relation to the meridians of the body.
Yeah, it's like we are out of the control of the own behavior. We know what we should do or we wanted to do, but yet we acted out differently.
And we have controversy within us all the time because we need that. This is hot, this is cold. Where's the middle road? How do I fit in with whatever's going on? Well, we've got to dig into that RNA and find out, oh, yes, I remember an association with that, And so in remembering the association, we justify and rationalize in some way consciously why to keep it or toss it away. Now, the things that we've actually mastered, we toss it away because we're not ready to change. We don't want to go further. So we toss it away. But the things that really cut us in the heart and the solar plexus, our feeling and our nervousness, they're the things where we're ready to change, but we're fighting it. We want to give up, start over, but we're nervous and afraid to let go of the past and move on with the future. And right now, America's in crisis that way. You got Donald Trump in I told you I'm writing a book about that.
Oh, yes, that's going to be an interesting topic.
Well, I didn't want to do it. It's the first book I've ever done that Spirit Guides asked me to write. And it's really different because usually when I'm writing, we write, and it's all a sense of oneness. But this book is, they're dictating to me, and then they tell me, stop doing this, go and check out that, look up this on the computer and that, and so on. And I'm telling you, the hardest thing for me was looking at his ancestry, because I needed it all so I could show the DNA, see? And the hardest thing, it was so confusing, and I can see why Donald Trump is absolutely confused, because the ancestries have got the same name, Fred, Fred Christ, Fred this, Fred that.
Really? Okay.
And then on the other side, Elizabeth, Louise, Marie. I mean, it's just like every single generation had no personal identity. They were loyal to their ancestors. And here's Donald Trump, and there's been 3 other Donalds, by the way, before him. Here's Donald Trump, who's a Gemini, and Gemini, they're north and south, opposites. You know, that's why the 2 things here are the lines across. So Geminis can't make up their mind. It's all for this and not all for that, or it's all for that and not all for this, and they're constantly changing, unless they're aware. Okay, and then if they're aware, they're pretty smart. Well, the more I get into this, because I didn't want to do it, I said, no.
Yes, exactly. That's pretty peculiar, because you wrote all these spiritual books, and here it is, politics all of a sudden.
This is still spiritual, because what I'm doing by taking Donald's life, I am showing the soul structure coding, which we come into in the spirit world first. We pick it up there, and then we bring it into the human body as a spiritual coding. And then,
sounds like a destiny, isn't it?
Oh, everybody has it. It's a destiny for everyone. We must have it, because.
And you cannot change it when you hear, or?
No, you can't change your soul structure coding. And
you can read it from astrology. What's your destiny is?
Let me tell you quickly what it is. You have your archetype, which never changes throughout eons of time. You were birthed, if you like, by God. I'm a warrior, and no matter how many times I come into embodiment, I'm still a warrior. A warrior doesn't fight battles. A warrior cuts a pathway. So that's why I'm a pioneer, okay? But I can wear the mask of any of the other archetypes. There are the 6 of them. And in this life, I'm actually using the artisan, so I can paint and draw. Okay, I'm using the scholar, so I can teach. You see what I'm saying? So as we evolve, you can put on different masks of the other archetypes, and ultimately you've worn all 7 in many, many different lives, all become oneness.
Yes, that sounds good, actually.
Yeah. So the archangels, you know, the 7 of them, I've been channeling them quite a lot. Faniel is, and Barakio I don't talk to so much, but Raphael, you know, all of them. And right now it's Haniel's time, and Haniel was actually the archangel standing over me when the bomb went off across the street. So he was protecting me. And I knew, it's in my book that I showed earlier on, you know, my journey into the oneness. And so I won't spend much time talking about it, but the archangels, they're the creators of our form, and that the spirit has a form. The energy of, combined energy of all that is goes back through them, and through them into God, the I am. And of course, the God, the I am, is not in judgment of us, nor the archangels. It's all about continuance. It's all about anything is. And therefore there is no bad.
Is it also about experiencing things? Because there were these old concepts about evolution, that we can become more complete, like achieve that oneness, but also experience, like the God or source wants to experience itself through different particles of souls.
There is that mirror image, yes, and it's only awakened consciousness in the last 10 years. Prior to that, when I talked about it, people thought I was a bit high and mighty, I suppose, the way they'd look at you like, you know. And I'd say, you know, I'm not saying because they think, because I'm talking about it, that I'm ascended and they're not. And I said, no. I'm just telling you how it works. And we can be ascended, and then we can be lowly, you know, and down here in the mud, you know, and then we can be ascended again, then we'll be down in the mud again. And it's the same for the hierarchy.
Well, that sounds a little bit scary, because you think you're so high, or your life is so great, or you are such a great, you know, as a soul, you remember your powers, let's say, and then all of a sudden, all is taken away from you. You are in the deep somewhere.
Let me tell you this, only an ascended master can come into embodiment and be a Hitler.
That's a very courageous statement. Interesting, but makes sense in a way. Yeah,
it's in the Way to Oneness Revisited. Basically, what Spirit showed me all those years ago, because I was in my 40s when I wrote that book.
Mm-hmm.
That was published in German. Basically, what they were saying is that the higher the elation is in your consciousness, the more you must know the darkness. So every so often, a high ascended being will come into embodiment on the earth and disrupt everything. Now, if you stop and think about Hitler, he was just a little soldier. And before that, he was a little boy who wanted a beautiful world. He didn't have a negativity. He wanted people to unify, which is what an ascended master would want. But then he gets into the politics and they see him as an opportunity. When I say they, other people in the plot who are all in the oneness before they ever come into embodiment, setting up this situation. And when you think of the overview of the whole of, say, World War II, and every single country that got involved and every single person that got hurt or saved or whatever in some way, they were all part of the whole point of change. And every single one of them had free will in the way they came into embodiment to perform their part in the play. So we're now looking at a ginormous play where the oneness will come into embodiment around a leader who's high ascended so that he can experience being degraded, demoralized, decimated, and so on and down the Ds. We had a lot of Ds with Hitler, and self-depredation and all these things until he eventually, has to kill himself. And right next to him is the love of his life, who sees him doing all these things, and all she had to do is just look at him and say, every so often, I love you today. Right? Mm-hmm. Eva Brown. Okay, that was her. Okay, now every single nasty monster has a nice someone around them. Okay, and everyone who goes out there in the world has their opinions and their point of views about the world. And they're entitled to it, and there's nothing right or wrong with it in terms of the oneness. It's perfect, but here on earth, we're like, how could you say that? And why did you do that? And so on. But the bottom line is that we need that controversy. We need that conflict. We need that demoralization. We need that happy and joy. Friction, friction, friction.
There is always a friction. And, it's interesting because it's so easy, in a sense, to follow that thinking that, in the way, it was already plotted, the destiny, everything was put in motion and it's in the own perfection. But then where really that free will is, because that can give some excuses to people who do harm to other people.
Yeah, I see your point, and that's here on this planet and the rationality. But the bottom line is, this is the place of experiences. Mm-hmm. This is like going into the twilight zone.
The highest level, that it is like that.
Yeah, and if you go into the lower astral, you're going to see humans that are hardly human in form because they're so emaciated in their mindsets. It looks like a horror movie, That's why people keep all these movies, by the way. Head into something we can look at and go, oh, that's what it looks like. And they make up these incredible costumes and make these people look like they've got 4 eyes and God knows what else. But the reality is, if we can think of it, it exists in the oneness. Okay? Mm-hmm. If it exists in the oneness, we can bring it into form. So there's a pattern of expansion and collapse throughout all time that we know of. But if you think about the oneness, and I was talking about this just recently with someone else on another show, but it's very important. Think of the oneness as a giant amoeba And this giant amoeba isn't going to separate itself that often. It can do, but so we'll have it separate, and one part is up here and the other part is separating and separating and separating to our trillions and trillions of little bits, feeding back, feeding back, feeding back. But after a while, this part up here says, I'm saturated, I want you all back. So they all have to come back and join in again and become one. And there's peace. We've been talking about the Enlightenment. We've been talking about, how we want peace and these 1,000 years of peace and all these things that people have been passing down from generations. And we haven't got it because we're only just now being called back. And it's going to take eons of time to get back to the way.
I heard about this concept, and after we get that back, it's going to start again separation. Yeah. So it's just a phase, and we just repeating the cycles.
Right, but now think of this amoeba as God, if you like, and it's absorbing and it's contracting like this all the time, and it's getting bigger and bigger and wider and deeper. So much more to the experience of the wholeness of the oneness. So the dynamics of what planet do you come from? Are you a grey or a Arcturian or whatever it is in some way comes into it as well, because ultimately everything that is part of this giant contracting, expanding energy, force field, whatever you want to call it. It's constantly moving, and without our physical activities, it wouldn't have that happen. Because in the oneness, everything is I am, everything is I exist. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes totally sense to me. I heard, of course, about these concepts and other coming to my mind. One more image comes to my mind. There was one script, I read the book that was about Sri Yukteswar, the master of Yogananda, if you ever heard about that one.
Yes, I know.
You know that. So there was a scripture there, and at the end it was said that God is also evil. It was the upper part was a circle. Half of it was God and half of it was evil.
Yeah, well, you see, again, evil is the earthly consciousness of things going wrong. But in one sense, things going wrong is perfect because it's geeing up all the energy and moving everything and swirling everything around to come into a new direction, a new understanding, a new way of doing things, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, practically, on all levels. So it takes a community of individuals, i.e., let's say, someone rushing in and shooting all those people in the temple. It's so terrible. We'll sit here and how could they do that and so on and so forth. But if we go into the overview, that person did that so that down the road some future generations will go, we are not going to have separation in the religions. We're going to have unity in the religions. So there's always a reason, a purpose behind what someone does that's bad. Because unfortunately, we learn by the bad ways. We remember by the bad ways. But the good ways, they slip away. We forget them. Unless someone reminds us, like, with the cauliflower.
Yeah, I get you very well. And it's good to understand it this way. And I just want to mention something about few of my clients, because it's hard to tell them this. They're not really ready for something like that. Because if someone is dying or it's the last maybe month and doctors didn't give him more opportunity. And I actually work with someone sick of cancer, and we had a great spiritual work, but this person still died. And that time I was asking, but why? And the answer came that every spiritual work counts. That this person goes somewhere, and whatever we did in this lifetime, it's gonna count for him wherever he's gonna go. But of course, it wasn't really comforting me that time.
number one, cancer is caused by anger. And it would be, you know, my mother, for example, had a lot of anger, and she got cancer of the breast. And that's what took her over. Partly because she wouldn't have treatment. She didn't want all the stuff done. You know, she said, leave me alone, I'll go when I go, you know, so, which she did. My sister also developed lumps in her breast, and it's cancerous, but she's clear now. But the difference is my sister has a lot of anger, and she can snap at me even today, but she can cuddle it and ease it and then come back to I love you, you know. So she plays that game, whereas my mother was all hate, you know. So cancer is something that, you know, if I was to talk on that alone, I could probably talk for about 10 hours. But the bottom line is, you know, the purest energy that you're looking at that causes it is anger. So anybody who's watching this, if you're angry about stuff and you don't want cancer, you know, get rid of that anger.
Get rid of anger.
Get rid of it.
Anger.
Yeah.
We should teach some course about getting rid of anger.
You neutralize it. Okay. It's only a point of view. I mean, you have a choice. You can look at, say, this bottle of water. I'm going to hold this up with an example. Okay, I can look at this and say, well, this is the very cheapest one I could find, you know, $1 a bottle kind of thing. And you could sit there and argue with me forever that I should have got the $3 one, right? And who's right, who's wrong? And you could end up saying, I'm really furious with you because you didn't listen to me and you should have, you know, spent the $3, right? Well, I have a choice. Do I want to respond to you, fight you back over it? Or can I just say, oh, it's just water?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example. You know, I'm also dealing with people who have problems with relationships, and also they remember some past reincarnations, for example, that the cycle tends to repeat. So whether they committed suicide and they come back and they want it again, you know. So that concept you were mentioning, that one time you are living as, I don't know, queen or someone great, and then you lose your powers and you are somebody else. It is true, because people say that, like, I was here this great and then I was someone else. But I'm worried about those that tend to repeat the same cycle, and they remember the memories. They say, okay, I committed suicide, now I feel I'm going to do it again, you know?
We're putting up a whole subject here because, number one, most of the people who think that they've committed suicide before are just rational why they have the courage to do it again in this life. Actually, those who do it, especially when I was in Japan teaching for over 28 years, I found a lot of people who were, you know, it was common to everyone to be late because someone had thrown themselves in front of a train, or someone has, you know, thrown themselves in one of the canals which you can't get out because the walls are like 10 foot high once you're in, and you just got to go with the current out to the ocean. It's freezing cold water, so you're dead, you know. Right. And there's areas like in the area of Mount Fuji where there's forests at the foothills, and people go, it's like a jungle. People go in there and just starve themselves to death, or cut their wrists or something. And once every 2 years, a professor from the university goes in there and clears out the bodies, literally, usually by, you know, and there's hundreds of them. You know, so it's that thick. Now, that brings it home to you just how depression, recession, conflict in family union, and we're looking at Japan with a country where marriages were made and arranged and unhappy and miserable and so on. Japan is only starting to wake up to the Western world's ideas. And I was a large influence, I think, in being there for so long to bring them education. But I had to deal with a lot of suicidal, repressed, depressed people. And I also, when I was doing nursing, when I was 16 on my weekends, I was learning psychology and psychiatry at a place called the Home and Hospital for the Incurables. I mean, you go to a place like that, you know you're never coming out. And people were all terribly depressed for various reasons, and you had to put your shield up because it was so
Yes.
And then there was a mental hospital that I worked in for a while, and as a counselor, and you would see these earthbound spirits laid up against the walls of this whole complex, because it was literally an old psychiatric hospital for the 1800s. It was that older building in England, you know. So I'd walk down there and I'd just see all these earthbound spirits who are still mentally fixed in their psychotic ways.
Oh my God, how you dealt with that? Because that is heavy for someone.
They would actually go into the bodies of mentally disturbed patients. And that's why I was there, and I would tell the doctor, look, this person is possessed, you know. And they go, yeah, you know, more drugs. I said, no, not more drugs. We need to get the earthbound out, and then he'll be fine, you know. And they were all amazed at what I could do, you know. We did quite a lot of that. But there were a lot I couldn't, because, you know, I was very restricted by circumstances in those days. People didn't believe in a possession, you know, or they did. It was extreme.
They don't do that even now. It's interesting you mentioned a psychiatric hospital. You know, sometimes I work not officially with Reiki, but someone asked me to go to psychiatric hospital and help the brother who doesn't talk anymore because he's so heavily drugged. And if he's not drugged, he tends to attack people. Oh. So I say, how am I supposed to help him?
Well, there are 101 ways to help him, but the bottom line is you got to transform his energy, his body. One of the ways that is very helpful to do is my pterogram therapy, which is geode slices that have circles in. They've got to have circles in. You don't want the wavy lines, or, you know. And you put those on the chakras, okay? You know where they are, right?
Yes, sure.
And then you just put your hands over and make circles over the top. So, you know, if I'm using my mouse, but if this was a pterogram, I would have this on the heart chakra, and I would be making circles like this, and they would go faster, 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 and then spiraling up through the 5 bodies. Yeah, because we have the physical, then we have the etheric, which is your lower self, emotion, and mind. Then we have the spirit body, which is the coding, the soul coding I was talking about, carries that. And then we have the higher mind body, which is your connection to oneness and spirit, and all the family of spirits that you're with. And then you've got the soul, which is like a river, always flowing energy through you. And so doing each of those chakras is going to speed up his body's vibration, and any earthbound that's in there is not in that vibration. They can't be lifted by it, so they leave. And at the same time, telepathically, you can be telling them, come on, it's your time to be saved. You know, do you remember do you remember your dad? Do you remember whatever, you know? And they start.
This is perfect. This is perfect what you said about this, because people can try it for themselves about this energetical centers, chakras, to speeding it up and releasing energy, because it's going to balance probably the body. But it's a funny thing, because the doctors, they refuse me, of course, to cooperate. So I only did the psychic thing, let's say, and I got the message from him. So he was basically able to connect with me on a telepathic level. And it was very clear. He told me he has to go back to his original country in Africa. And that was very clear. So I passed the message, but of course they don't believe it. So the guy is probably heavily drugged still, and I don't know if it's true, so I cannot insist on it.
Well, I want to ask you that now. Assuming he was to go back to Africa, was he black or white?
Yes, he was black.
Okay, and you know, when you see him in his country, you have to ask questions like, okay, what was it like? And you see if you get images. Like
I got. He showed me everything. He showed me exactly what he was missing, where he wants to be. I saw the landscape. It was very beautiful. And the message was that the landscape will heal him. The nature there will heal him.
Now, my next question is, did you ask, are you an earthbound?
No, I don't even know that word in English, earthbound.
The earthbound, it's earthbound to the earth. If it's an earthbound spirit who's in his body, keeping him deranged so that when he wakes up, he's going to attack everyone. Okay, so let's make it live. Let's say
I think I get it.
He's a natural medium. His spirit has bonded with the spirit of the earthbound spirit, so they both live in his body. And this earthbound spirit is angry because he wants to go back to his native country because he was once upon a time pulled away as a slave.
I feel this way. I will pass that message to this guy.
It's exact. I'm telling you the answer, so you can go back and do it because this is what they're telling me right now. So this patient,
but he has to go back to the Africa.
So it's not the patient that has to go to Africa; it's the earthbound that has to go to Africa. Now, what I have the ability to do is when I go to sleep, I come out of body. And through you, I can find him, and I can find the earthbound, and I can take the earthbound away, and he can wake up if they stop drugs.
But I have one warning: he's heavily drugged.
That's what I said. If they take away the drugs, I cannot wake him.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So the next step is we're going to go to the family member and put in their dreams while they're sleeping that they want to stop the drugs. That they have a feeling within them that if he comes off the drugs, he'll be better through the family. It's the only way you can do it. Because if the family stand up and say, we don't want them to be on any more drugs, then they have to listen to the family. The doctor cannot just give it.
They didn't do that decision because they were scared they're going to kick him out of that hospital because they already kick him out from every hospital possible. So it was his last chance.
Let's see if we can do that, okay, through you.
But I will try. I will suggest that because that portion of information you said about this earthbound spirit,
it's something that Spirit gave me the word years ago.
I didn't see that in the vision, but of course it was also the time to end. So I had to go. So I only communicated what I saw, but that part can be crucial right now. So I will pass that.
And if you want to, the family can always find me and talk to me about it. I don't mind. I'm open to receiving, information, if they want to learn.
I will pass them. I will definitely pass them. They will need some translation unless you speak German.
Well, then you will have to translate with them.
Yes, that's fantastic.
It's always a way. I've done so many, I've been in so many different countries, and I've done so many TV shows, radio shows where I've been working with translators.
I would love to touch on so many topics. They just basically come into my head right now. And about also the helping the spirit to go after death, because sometimes they are often lost after the point of dying. And I also had a lot of experience here, but I'm always willing to share that. And every puzzle, people see something, and collecting it all together and showing people how to do that so they can help other people, because it's such a huge topic. So many people are dying, for example, and they are really lost.
Well, the bottom line here is, I've just rescued so many hundreds of thousands of spirits through my life that it's very easy to do. But if we get our consciousness in the way, then it's not so easy because we get drawn into the dialogue. So, number one, an earthbound thinks they're still human in many ways. They don't think of themselves as spirit. Number two, they're still carrying their thoughts, their ideas and feelings about their lifestyle. Yep. And number three, they're going to argue with you because they don't want to leave the people they're hanging around, which could be their children or their husband or someone that they're worried about. And so you're looking at an earthbound spirit that is still basically thinking they're still alive. and you have to get.
They don't understand the situation.
So what I usually do somewhere along the line is I'll bring in mom, dad, grandma, Auntie Sally, someone up the road that just died that they used to know before they died, you know, and it's like, what are you doing here? And wow, it's you, it's really you, and, you know, and they start to realize if I'm seeing you and I knew you were dead, then I must be dead too. And then that is the unity comes, and they're able. I wrote so many different things in the book I talked about earlier on. There was one story about a nun who was earthbound because she'd been masturbating every night, and she didn't feel she deserved a place in heaven, Catholic. And this is back in the 70s, I think, somewhere around there. And so a whole bunch of, you would say a whole bunch, about 5 nuns appeared in my living room, and she's here in with a earthbound, a patient, okay, with an earthbound, this spirit is in her. So she's like the medium for it, speaking all the words. And I'm saying to her, you know, it's not a sin in the oneness and all this thing. She's like, you know, whatever, argue. And then finally, I put my patient into a deep hypnotic state, okay? But I'm talking to both of them, her and the earthbound that's in her. And I say, you know, you're very tired because you've had a lot of stress. You worried so much about everything. You're very nervous, because they both are, you know, together oneness. So, you know, she went into the alpha state very easily, and then I took her into theta state. Her eyes rolled up in her head, and I knew I'd really got her out of the way. I said, okay, we're going to talk to your friend who's with you. And so, you know, bring her forward for me. And so Maria something or other, I remember that. There always a Maria somewhere because of Mother Maria. So anyway, these nuns came for her, but she wouldn't go. I got her out of the body of my patient, so she was just sound asleep. And she was standing beside me, and she's saying, no, I can't go, I'm a sinner. And these women opened up, and this dog, like a sheep herding dog, black and white thing, whatever you call it, came out and grabbed the hem of her tunic and started to pull her towards the group of nuns. And she's like, no, because she doesn't want to hurt the dog, you see. So the dog's pulling her into the group, and as she got to the edge of the group, the nuns who were waiting just opened up and brought her in, and then there was golden light and they were all gone, dog as well. And my husband, he was like, oh, I saw that in his head. He didn't see it. Okay. You know, and that was one of the few psychic times that he actually knew what was with me and knew what was going on, and had a sense of it, because in those days he was doing paranormal photography. And he used to get sorts of things on, you know, the kind of film that you hold in your hand.
Okay. Maybe we can see that one day.
Well, you know, the best ones he often had to give to the client who took it home with them. But we have quite a lot about me, where he experimented with me and stuff. But coming back to the earthbound, I want you to understand that there is a codependency between the earthbound and the human. They've agreed in the overview to help one another. So the earthbound is testing the person who's alive, and the person who's alive is learning to let go of their negativity. So there's always a purpose. And as a healer, you have to know and attune to both, so you can see what the common factor is that drew them together. And, you know, when you're a medium, you can actually look at the soul structure coding and go as far and high as you want to for where you need to look. But more often than not, on an earthbound with a human, you're looking on the lower levels. You're looking down in the everyday sort of marriage areas, work areas, and things like that.
I need to make sure that I understand it right. By the earthbound, are you saying about every, you know, like different elements, earth, maybe even, you know, water, ocean, stone, mountain, or is general nature?
This is the earth. We're on the planet Earth. They are bound to planet Earth.
Okay, so it's the wholeness.
It's not about the soil or the water. It's about they are tied to the ways of this planet. They know how to get off this planet, if you will. It's like in their mind, they haven't got a spaceship to go to heaven, you know. So they stay here and they hang around the areas where, you know, people are negative, because then they can get into the negativity. They can push ideas into their brains because they're insecure and unstable, that makes them feel like they belong to that person. And
then I misunderstood totally, because I was thinking that you're talking about planet nature, but it seems like it's like elements, how to call that in English, the sort of a spirits or
it's like the
egregores, how you say about those spirits?
Let me really spell it out for you. Okay, here's a human being. You're very negative, you're depressed, you're worried, your husband's sleeping with someone else, you've got 4 kids, you've got no income, you don't know what to do, all you can think about is a bottle of pills. Okay, here's an earthbound who died, and they were in a car truck, you know, some kind of disaster. They got killed, and they don't know they got killed in the truck. They're outside on the sidewalk going, oh, someone had a car accident, I better get home. They get home to their house and they walk in, hi everyone, I'm here, and nobody is. They're all crying, they're all sitting there, what's happened, and listening, they get to hear something's happened with somebody in a car accident who's just died. Who's that? Who died? You know, talking. They're not talking to me. I don't know what I'm going to do. Oh, blow them. I'll go out in the street. Oh, look, there's someone who looks, they've got a nice light. I'll follow them. And they follow them to
ghosts. Talk about ghosts. Okay.
They're not ghosts. I'll define ghost in a minute. Okay. This is a spirit. Okay. Spirit has a body. Okay. So they follow someone, and then that someone is maybe light and bright, and that someone knows they're there, and they lift them up to heaven. That's the good scenario. But let's say they find someone like attracts like in the mirror image, who's negative like they are from their death. They've had a car accident. They follow this person home, and this person they find out has also had some accident, like breaking their leg. Now we've got something to bond together. Accidents. Okay, right. So start talking brain-wise about how terrible the accident was, and there's a bonding, and it goes on through all the show.
Okay.
And then eventually that earthbound can come into the body like a trance medium, take over the person's consciousness and talk their words and shout in their mood, like this friend of yours that's already drugged up to the eyeballs because it's an earth saying, let me go back to my native country. I'm not a slave anymore. Okay, this is another thing you must be aware of. Earthbounds don't have any time consciousness. You could be having an earthbound around you that's 4,000 years old. You believe it's still 4,000 years ago. And you say to them, you know, what year is it? And they go, oh, 4,000 BC. And you go, okay, did you have cars? What's that? Well, you just were in my car with me. We were going down the road. Oh, I thought that was a chariot.
Right. We have some good stories here for the books.
Right, you could make a story. So that is spirit work. Earthbound, saving spirits, okay, to heaven. A ghost is the energy of the etheric body that remains after the spirit has gone. And it is relative to astrology. It is relative to numerology. It's relative to the energy of a home or a house where whatever happened. So, for example, Anne Boleyn, the famous walk that she had to make across in the Tower in England to get her head cut off. Can you imagine how much fear she was? 18 or 19, something. How much fear a young woman would have that she's been the Queen of England and now she's nothing and she's going to have her head cut off. Can you imagine the amount of energy she was in fear, pain, anger? guilt, all the lot together, because it's not fair. How could they do this to me? I didn't really have an affair with someone else. That's a lie. It's all political. Oh, but what am I going to do? I've got to be a brave queen. I've got to smile and look like I'm going to heaven. I don't know if I'm going to heaven. I'm going to hell. I'm doubt. You know, all that energy and is dissipated, and it goes into the walls. It goes into the floor. And then on a certain night when the sun is, or the moon, or whatever is in the right position, Miss A or B happened to be walking along, which happened to me. And I look up and there she is walking across.
Yeah.
She wasn't walking across. It was the emanation of her history walking across that had come together because of the energy that was amassed at that moment. I had to have Spirit explain that to me, because I already knew Anne Boleyn in the oneness, because we'd already been talking, so I knew she wasn't earthbound. But I saw her, and she was wearing grey, with a white collar and thing, and the hair was up because things were cut to her head, and the things like that. And the same with I was given one of my past lives. This would probably horrify you, but it would make a good story.
Don't worry about horrifying me.
I was in France during the revolution as a spirit entity, not human. And all these people were being guillotined. And what I was doing was walking into the back of their bodies, laying down, cut off, walking back into their body, lay down, cut off. I was guillotined.
Oh, God. Yeah.
That particular night that Spirit worked with me with that and showed me what I was doing in France during that revolution time, I must have been guillotined thousands of times. I just got to the point where it's okay. Just getting spirits from the French Revolution back into the spirit world. They were all earthbound. And if you remember back about 15 years ago when I was doing that, maybe a bit before, France was up in an uproar. And there was a lot of stuff going on. And, it's the same here. I just see a lot of people carrying earthbounds around right now. They're so negative. I don't know how
a lot of that.
Are you watching time?
Yes, I actually wanted to suggest, so you caught my telepathic thought. I just wanted to suggest to do part 2, because we are we're over time, like 1 hour and almost 40 minutes. So for today, we're gonna say goodbye to our audience, and we're gonna do part 2. And please share comments with us. What would you like to hear more? I have so many questions that I'm probably have to write them down before I'm going to ask them again and explore the subjects. One more time, thank you very, very much for sharing all the stories. We are looking for more. I am looking for more.
Thank you very much for having me. I love it. I love to be able to have any opportunity where I can share things I know. Thank you for asking me all those lovely questions.
Of course, I have more for you. Okay, so till the next time.
Bye-bye.